Hey, welcome to Sleep Crime Stories. Before we begin, let me ask, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? A quick comment and a subscribe go a long way, it really helps. Now, turn down the lights, and let's begin tonight's case. On March 1st, 2022, at the age of 77, Roger Kemp passed away in his home in Livewood. He was the best husband and father who cared for his family until the very last minute. However, a single memory from 20 years ago haunted Roger until his death, as it had completely changed his life. For 2 long years, he was forced to become a meticulous investigator to find the person responsible for his only daughter's untimely demise. If not for Roger's involvement, the case might have remained unsolved as the police were nearly powerless. But beyond the police, there was Roger, who could not allow the criminal to go unpunished. Let's return to the past and see what happened on that tragic day. Let's begin. Our story took place in the small suburb of Livewood, Kansas, a very small and safe town in the state. Here, all the neighbors know each other by name and wish you a good day upon meeting. The morning of June 18, 2002, started as usual for 19-year-old Alexandra Kemp. Her father had gone to work, her younger brother was still in bed, and her mother was making a delicious breakfast. Alexandra didn't finish her coffee because she was in a hurry to get to work. Allie, as her loved ones affectionately called her, had just finished her first year of college and returned to her hometown for the summer holidays. She got a job as a lifeguard at an outdoor public pool, where her boyfriend and brother were already working. That day, there were almost no visitors, and Allie calmly inspected the area and cleaned the auxiliary premises. Allie entered the pump room and turned around when an unfamiliar voice greeted her. She politely asked him to leave the restricted area and pointed to the door, but he attacked her and started tearing at her clothes. Allie hit him in the face, but he was much stronger. She tried to scream, but he covered her mouth with his hand, and the noise from the operating pumps left no chance to be heard. The next moment, Allie lost consciousness. Sometime later, her brother Tyler came to the pool to take over her shift. He saw her personal belongings on a table but could not find her anywhere. He searched all around, calling her by name, but Allie did not respond. In a panic, the young man called their father. Roger dropped everything and rushed to the pool. Together with Tyler, they carefully inspected the surrounding area, and to his relief, Roger found that Allie was not in the pool. Upon entering the pump room, Roger saw a large piece of tarpaulin. Shining a flashlight in the dim room, he noticed a pool of blood on the floor, and then a foot sticking out from under the tarp. The father threw off the tarp and cried out at the sight. He fell to his knees, trying to bring her to her senses, but she was unresponsive. At 5:29 p.m., Roger Kemp called the emergency services to report that his daughter had been fatally injured. Throughout the call, the father tried to revive his daughter. He tenderly covered her with his jacket, but blood continued to seep from the inflicted wounds. Roger talked to her and pleadingly asked her not to leave, but the girl was unconscious. The victim was urgently taken to hospital, where the death of 19-year-old Allie Kemp was confirmed. "I hope she was still conscious and could hear me, but she never came back," Roger said shortly after arriving at the local hospital. Alexandra Elizabeth Kemp suffered multiple head injuries from blunt force trauma, with a pool of blood nearby. Her shirt was torn, she was without pants and underwear, and there were signs of strangulation on her neck. Several of her fingers were broken, and her nails were torn off, suggesting that she had been brutally assaulted before being deprived of life. The pump room, where Allie's body was found, was in disarray, with items strewn about chaotically. It became clear that there had been a fierce struggle between Allie and her assailant, in which she did not give up, but he proved to be stronger. After her life was declared ended, the victim's body was sent for forensic examination, and the crime scene was thoroughly inspected. Unfortunately, the weapon used in the crime was not found either in the pump room or on the pool premises. However, a blood-stained tube of ointment, usually kept in the first aid kit, was found at the crime scene, which investigators found peculiar. They needed to determine why it was found near the victim's body. The ointment tube and its cap were collected for analysis. Police Chief Craig Hill, who inspected the crime scene, expressed his condolences to the parents of the deceased Allie Kemp, and stated that in his 35 years of service, this was probably the most horrific crime that could occur in the Livewood community. This crime shocked the quiet town and left too many questions, both for the public and for the investigators. The investigation was puzzled, as one of the main questions in the crime against the young woman was the motive. The first suspected motive was robbery, but her purse and all its contents were untouched, which completely ruled out this theory. The second suspected motive was an assault, but after receiving the forensic examination report, it was established that Allie had not been subjected to intimate violence. The lack of either of these two motives, and indeed any motive at all, made the crime mysterious and strange even to experienced investigators. So who needed to end the life of a young woman whose life had just begun in such a brutal way? Alexandra Elizabeth Kemp was born on October 11, 1982, in the city of Livewood. She was the long-awaited first child in the Kemp family, and their only daughter. Allie grew up in a loving home with her parents and two brothers in the idyllic, tree-lined suburb of Livewood. She graduated from high school with honors, loved soccer and poetry, and was voted the most beautiful girl in 8th grade. Following her dreams, Allie enrolled at Kansas State University. In 2002, she had just completed her first year at university and returned to her hometown of Livewood, where her family and boyfriend awaited her. She took a job as part of the service staff at the local pool, just 4 blocks from her family's home. It was a wonderful job at a nearby pool where her brother and boyfriend were already working. Thus, Allie was a young, promising woman who grew up surrounded by love and care, and who certainly could not have had any enemies. Investigators continued to explore various theories about the assault and interviewed friends and acquaintances of Allie to get a more complete picture of the day of the crime. One of the first suspects was Allie's boyfriend. Phil House had known Allie since school, and by 2002, they had been a couple for over 5 years. It seemed Phil had no reason to harm Allie, but the police had to consider him a suspect. During questioning, Phil explained that Allie had replaced him at the pool at 2 p.m., after which he went to another job. He was there until 4 p.m. Then he was at a friend's house playing video games until he received a call about Allie being in the hospital. Phil's alibi was confirmed by colleagues and friends he had been playing games with. However, the police did obtain crucial information from him. It turned out that Allie had called him at 2:52 p.m., but Phil couldn't answer. When he called her back at 3:44 p.m., she did not pick up the phone, which led investigators to suspect that Allie met her tragic fate during this time frame. Despite the desire to solve the case quickly, this clue did not bring the police any closer to finding the criminal. There was hope in the testimony of potential witnesses, as there should have been plenty on a summer day at a public pool. However, due to unfortunate weather conditions, the pool was almost empty that day. The search for any clues or testimonies was progressing very slowly. A few days later, after re-interviewing the pool staff and the surrounding areas, it was established that on the day of the crime, 2 employees from a lawn service company were working in the parking lot. They were brought in for questioning, where they described noticing a car driving around the parking lot in circles around 2:40 p.m., occasionally leaving but then returning. They were able to provide a clear description of the suspicious vehicle, a beige 1980 Ford pickup. Although the police did not have the vehicle's license number, they now had a piece of important information. However, even more valuable information came from one of Allie's friends. The testimony of Allie's friend, Laurel Wynn, helped provide a description of the suspected criminal. It turned out that around 3 p.m. that day, Allie called her friend Laurel and asked her to keep her company during her shift at the pool, as the day was cloudy and not very warm, so there were hardly any visitors. Laurel agreed, and after a while, her car pulled into the pool parking lot. She called Allie, but there was no answer. Not seeing Allie outside, Laurel blew loudly on a lifeguard whistle, thinking it would be amusing. At that moment, a man exited the pump room, pretending to talk on the phone. Laurel thought he might be Allie's boss, so she quickly left the pool to avoid causing her friend any trouble. As she left the pool area, the man turned around and waved at Laurel, allowing her to remember his face. Laurel did not wait for a call from her friend and left. Assuming she had seen the criminal, the police created and published a composite sketch based on Laurel's description, hoping it would lead them to the criminal. Thus, a very accurate sketch of the presumed criminal was made. The sketch and the description of the suspicious vehicle were broadcasted on local television. Undoubtedly, such publicity increased the chances of identifying and capturing the criminal. And the police indeed received a massive number of reports from people who believed they had seen this man. This led the investigation to its first suspect, James Drider. A young man, Drider owned an old Ford pickup and closely resembled the composite sketch. He lived in Olata, approximately 20 minutes drive from Livewood, where he worked as a mechanic in a small auto repair shop. Upon obtaining the address of the presumed suspect, police visited him at his workplace. However, James vehemently denied any involvement in the assault, and he had an alibi since he was at work all day. His boss confirmed that he was indeed at the auto shop on June 18th. Thus, despite a striking resemblance to the composite, James Drider was excluded from the list of suspects. The search continued. Months passed and the trail began to cool, but Roger never gave up. While detectives worked on every lead, he pursued new ones. Roger relentlessly conducted his own investigations. He regularly visited the police station, offering various ideas for capturing the criminal. Roger's unyielding efforts led him to appear on America's Most Wanted, where, in addition to sharing Ali's story, the composite sketch of the presumed suspect was shown. The popular show was broadcast not only on local television but also nationally. A new wave of messages flooded into police stations. Each message was meticulously processed, but for various reasons, each newly emerged suspect was almost immediately ruled out. Ali's boyfriend of 5 years, Phil House, also assisted. He initiated a virtual hunt, sending out emails to university students. He urged them to look at the composite sketch and watch the America's Most Wanted episode focusing on Ali's case. A reward of $50,000 was offered for any information leading to an arrest. Despite all efforts, the case again reached a dead end. However, 6 months after Ali's murder, detectives received new information about the previously familiar James Drider. It turned out that in January 2003, news outlets in neighboring Colorado reported the search for a man responsible for 3 assaults. Roger recognized Drider from the wanted sketch, who had been previously excluded as a suspect in Ali's murder and was now wanted for assaults. Despite Drider's alibi on the day of Ali Kemp's murder, the police now had no doubts they had found their suspect. But first, they needed to prove James' involvement. The man had no prior convictions, so he wasn't in the database, and investigators couldn't compare DNA. They needed to check this individual again and obtain his DNA to compare it with the DNA found at the crime scene. By this point, James Drider was on the run, making him very difficult to locate. It took the police 3 weeks to find him. At a gas station in Utah, Drider failed to pay for his fuel, and the staff detained him, calling the police. James Drider faced charges for 3 assaults and possibly also for the murder of Ali Kemp. When police compared his DNA sample with the sample from the crime scene, they were disappointed to find no matches. James Drider was a serial offender, but he did not end Ali Kemp's life. This was a major setback, as the investigation had come incredibly close to apprehending the suspect, only for detectives to have to start over from scratch. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, with the police still having no new suspects in Ali Kemp's case. 2 years passed, and the police's interest in the case gradually waned, but not Ali's father, Roger. He did everything within his power to find his daughter's assailant, though his options were limited. He periodically contacted USA Today, which published the composite sketch of the presumed suspect. Roger desperately searched for a broad-faced, somewhat bald man. He posted wanted notices throughout the city. His goal as a devoted father was not only to find the criminal, but also to keep his daughter's story alive in the public consciousness. Then, one day, Roger had a simple and brilliant idea. At the city's entrance, he saw a billboard. It occurred to him that hundreds, even thousands of people saw this billboard daily. Why not place the composite sketch on it? He contacted an advertising company to rent the billboard. When the company's management learned about Mr. Kemp's story, they offered not just one, but 8 billboards along highways near Livewood for the poster, free of charge. The estimated total daily viewership of these billboards was about 10,000, and Roger's efforts finally began to bear fruit. 2 years after Ollie Kemp's murder, police started receiving reports of people resembling the sketch. The billboard, along with a higher reward and television advertisements, led to a flurry of tips, including one about a young man named Benjamin Appleby. This individual lived in Bantam, Connecticut, where he was known as Ted Hoover. The 29-year-old man lived under the pseudonym Hoover to avoid prosecution for an intimate offense from 1997. He owned a Ford pickup of the same beige color as the vehicle the suspect was believed to drive. It later turned out that Ted Hoover worked in pool maintenance in 2002, specifically at the pool where Ollie was murdered. Armed with this information, police went to question Ted Hoover at his home. During the conversation, he behaved uncertainly and was visibly nervous. At the end of the discussion, Ted was asked to provide a DNA sample to clear himself from the list of suspects. He was clearly unprepared for this request and tried to evade it by making excuses. Initially, he asked to postpone providing samples until he could speak with his lawyer and requested some time to think. The next day, the detective contacted Ted Hoover's lawyer, who informed him that Ted did not want his DNA entered into the national database and thus was opposed to voluntarily providing a DNA sample to the police. Detectives attempted to press the lawyer to provide a letter of assurance that the DNA would not be entered into any database and would only be used within the scope of Ollie Kemp's case materials. The lawyer requested a pause to relay this information to his client. However, 2 days later, the lawyer responded that his client was still against providing his DNA to the police. The detectives were convinced that this individual had something to hide. They remembered that they had spoken with Ted Hoover at the crime scene of Ollie's death many years ago, although he did not seem suspicious at the time. The police had questioned him in connection with Ollie's case, but were unable to achieve the desired breakthrough. The investigators had no choice but to secure a warrant for the compulsory collection of Ted Hoover's DNA. On March 24, 2004, armed with a warrant, they returned to Ted Hoover's residence, only to find the house empty. The man had fled. Ted Hoover was officially declared wanted on suspicion of Ollie Kemp's murder. During the search, Roger continued to play an active role. He returned to the proven method of publishing posters on billboards across neighboring states. He purchased over 500 billboard advertisements. Ted Hoover's face was displayed in Colorado, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, and Nebraska. To fund such a massive manhunt, Roger Kemp had to spend all his savings and even sell the home his family had lived in for over 20 years, as the entire billboard campaign now cost over $100,000. And it was not in vain. In August 2004, the police received a tip from Missouri that someone recognized the person from the billboard. However, the tip mentioned that this individual was now living not under the name Ted Hoover, but as Benjamin Appleby. The police went to the address provided in the tip, and indeed, they found the man known to them as Ted Hoover. He was arrested on the spot on suspicion of murder. The police legally obtained a saliva sample from him. Their suspicions were confirmed when the DNA of Benjamin Appleby, aka Ted Hoover, matched the DNA found at the crime scene. Benjamin had several prior run-ins with the law, ranging from robbery to intimate offenses. The police in Connecticut arrested him on an earlier warrant charging him with indecent exposure. When questioned about Ollie's murder, he confessed to the police that he approached the girl he liked to flirt with her, but she did not reciprocate. When he tried to touch her, she pushed him away, causing Benjamin to lose control and assault her. Later, Benjamin was charged with murder and attempted assault. He was found guilty on both counts. "I strangled her, I guess. I don't know why the hell I did it," said Benjamin Appleby in a recorded interview. According to Appleby, he touched her. "Not strongly," he said, and when she resisted, he began to strangle and beat the 19-year-old girl. Then the detectives learned the horrifying reason why the antiseptic ointment was open. Appleby tried to assault Ollie when she lost consciousness and he needed lubrication. In his defense, Benjamin Appleby said that he simply snapped, headed back to his car, and drove away. On December 10, 2005, on the final day of the trial against Benjamin Appleby, aka Ted Hoover, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He was found guilty under Kansas law, 50 years in prison with no chance for parole until 2054. However, Benjamin Appleby, who has been serving his sentence for several years now, has expressed doubts about the fairness of his sentence under the Kansas Hard 50 law. He argued that since the factors that led to his Hard 50 were determined by a judge, not a jury, as required by a previous U.S. Supreme Court ruling, Kansas law automatically required that his sentence be modified. Prosecutors contend that the state law does not apply to Benjamin Appleby's case, and that the Hard 50 should remain in effect. Roger Kemp warned the public that reducing the prison term for Benjamin Appleby would put other young women and girls at risk. This marked the end of Roger Kemp's struggle and his pursuit of the man who ended his daughter's life. His relentless determination to see Ali's assailant face justice led to a rather unusual idea. He wanted to use highway billboards so that every passerby could see the composite sketch. Roger Kemp's inventive idea of using billboards to reach more people proved very successful. Several states across the country decided to adopt similar measures with high success rates. After Benjamin Appleby's conviction, Roger Kemp founded the Ali Kemp Educational Foundation, named Take Defense. It offers self-defense training to girls and young women aged 12 to 23. Workshops are conducted nationwide. Participants have sent hundreds of testimonials from women saying that the training prevented attacks and even saved their lives. Until his last days, Kemp personally spoke at events and before each local class. Over 70,000 people across the country have taken this self-defense course. Later, he started a self-defense program for girls and women of all ages, named the Ali Kemp Educational Foundation, or simply TAKE. It teaches women how to protect themselves in dangerous situations. In 2011, Roger Kemp was also awarded the Presidential Citizens Medal for his work with the foundation. Out of 6,000 nominees, Kemp was one of 13 people to receive one of the highest honors a civilian can receive from the president. He believed his would still be alive if she had known how to defend herself and, as a result, hoped to teach other women to do the same. Years after the tragic loss of his only beloved daughter, he still could not bear to describe the brutal assault on her and did not wish to recall that horrific day that completely changed his life. He ended her life because he attempted to attack her, and it's very hard for me to say assault her. He ended her life and then tried to assault her again, said Roger Kemp in an interview. Friends and acquaintances who took an active part in the search for Alexander Kemp's assailant have become a close-knit family who still remember and mourn her sudden and unjust demise. Tireless, passionate, and kind, Roger Kemp passed away at the age of 77. He truly was a national treasure, said Jill Leaker, his friend and colleague. Roger Kemp's ingenuity helped hundreds of people find justice. Inspired by Kemp's idea, many other police departments across the country have adopted similar billboard strategies. To date, these billboards have helped authorities in Kansas alone capture more than 30 fugitives. Once, on a popular TV show, Roger Kemp said, "You have two choices. You can stay in bed and pull the covers over your head, or you can get out and fight the battle. I chose to fight. I would never let this guy win," and he kept his word. By his efforts, he protected the community from a brutal criminal who surely would have repeated his actions. Honor and praise to such a devoted, loving father and truly strong individual. Still with me? Good, that means you're ready for the rest. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want more cases just like this one. Any life, even the most shameful, can be wrapped up in a beautiful wrapper. If you tell it in a calm voice and present the negative character as a victim of circumstances, you are sure to feel sympathy and regret for him. The fact is that many bad people have charisma, strength, cunning, and we sincerely believe that they were not always bad because often they made such circumstances and we, without noticing, find excuses for their disreputable deeds. But today we will not justify illegal actions and certainly will not cover anyone. After learning about this case, you will decide for yourself whether their actions are worth justification. On April 4, 2015, emergency services received an eerie call from a local resident. A terrified male voice yelled into the phone to the dispatcher that he had gone into a living room to turn on the lights and check on him. But when he went up to the second floor of the room, he saw blood everywhere. The victim's friend reported that everything was covered in blood, and the injured man was not breathing. After police arrived, the unincorporated community of Alette in Montgomery County was shocked by the brutal murder of 59-year-old local resident Charles Taylor. The crime scene looked like the subject of nightmares and resembled the set of a horror movie. Blood was everywhere, on the carpet, on the paintings, and the couch where the murdered man was located was completely soaked in blood. The brutality of the crime made it look like a grudge drama. After all, definitely, the attacker wanted not only Charles's death, but also to cause him as long as possible unbearable pain time after time, stabbing a sharp knife. The examination of the house showed no visible signs of forced entry, and Charles's bloody body was lying upstairs in his room, which meant that the criminal knew the house and acted decisively. The forensic medical examination found that Charles Taylor suffered blunt force trauma to the back of his head and 31 stab wounds, as a result of which he died. Charles Taylor was considered a kind and generous man, had an adult son with whom he had a good relationship. He adored his 2 grandchildren and daughter-in-law Amanda. This is the part of life that people see and draw conclusions about the family's well-being. But was this really how things were in the Taylor family? So let's get to the bottom of this ugly family drama. The initial investigation was relatively slow, as the police didn't have many leads to work with. They started looking for Charles's acquaintances but couldn't find anyone who had a motive or intent to harm him. Then came the theory that it was someone in Charles Taylor's family, and it didn't take them long to find out the name of the assailant. In fact, that's when investigators got lucky and were approached by a crime blogger with photos of Amanda Taylor posing for selfies against Charles's lifeless body. She has been put on the wanted list. Amanda Barbara Nicole Taylor was born on March 27, 1991 in Christiansburg, Virginia. There is not much information about Amanda's childhood. It is only known that it was difficult because both of her parents spent some time in prison. Amanda's youth began with a lot of problems that she created for herself. After meeting Mariah Roback, Amanda's illicit life began a merry-go-round. Together, they got into a lot of trouble. On October 23, 2005, according to Montgomery County Sheriff's records, when the girls were just 12 years old, Amanda and Mariah jumped into a car and ran away from home, which they were charged with unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. In early April 2006, Amanda was charged with disorderly conduct at the middle school she attended. She yelled that she hated the place, hated all the people there, and would definitely kill them all. This incident definitely went beyond the threshold of the standard teen drama. And this is only a small-known portion of Amanda's police station record. In 9th grade, Amanda met Rex Taylor, who was 2 years older than her, and they began dating. Amanda and Rex were born on the same day, March 27. They both considered it a sign from above. Amanda dropped out of school completely when she found out she was expecting a baby. She and Rex married and soon had a son, but motherhood did not stop her criminal tendencies. The years of her married life were also punctuated by more run-ins with the law. The number of reports on Amanda Taylor in the police station grew exponentially. So recorded another attempted absconding after stealing a vehicle, a conviction for possession of alcohol, numerous domestic altercations, and a criminal record for possession of a controlled substance. Her husband, Rex Taylor, was not from a model family either, and despite their devotion to each other, Rex desperately struggled with addictions and the depression they caused. From the age of 15, the young lad had an addiction to illegal substances. After a while, the couple had a daughter, and at first, it seemed that Amanda still took up the mind and became a model mother and wife, led even a little not like all American women in their 20s, and with piercings, tattoos, and certainly daily selfies in social networks. But also, the family relationship between Amanda and Rex was not quite ordinary. The couple fanatically studied biographies of famous serial criminals and wrote letters to them in prison. Amanda began fantasizing about becoming a criminal herself. But before Amanda could realize this deadly dream, tragedy struck the family. The complicated relationship between the spouses was overshadowed by Amanda's suspicions of her husband's infidelity. In April 2014, their paths finally separated, and the couple parted. Rex returned to the family home, where he again began to use illegal substances. For months after the move, his lifeless body was discovered in a shed on the property. He had hanged himself on the day of his son's 7th birthday. After losing her beloved husband, Amanda lived with her mother and friend Mariah Roback from time to time. While staying with her friend Mariah, she also began a friendship with Sean Ball, another member of the Roback family. On March 27, 2015, on their shared birthday, Amanda went to Rex's grave and attempted to end her life. She was rescued and forcibly admitted to a psychiatric hospital because her antics and thought processes were clearly distorted and could bring harm to her and others. But despite her mother's insistence and pleas for prolonged treatment, Amanda was quickly released home. Once she was released from the psychiatric hospital, the situation seemed to escalate because of her unstable personality problems. So Mariah and her husband asked Amanda to move out. They also kicked out Mr. Ball, who had fallen madly in love with Amanda. It was during this period of time, when her only true friends seemed to have turned their backs on her, that Amanda developed a deep desire to kill, and the inspiration for this was none other than her late husband Rex Taylor. She wanted to do Rex justice and make him proud of her, and to do that, it was imperative that someone be skillfully taken dead. During his lifetime, Rex also had a fascination with serial criminals, so much so that his interest had long gone beyond a hobby. He socialized closely with criminals, and it was a friendship he was proud of in his lifetime. Imagine walking out of your house one morning to your mailbox and finding an envelope addressed to you from a notorious serial criminal who was arrested in 1980. Inside the envelope, you were relieved to find no creepy mementos, but instead find a birthday card for your young child, along with a handwritten message. Some might argue that such a message would be as horrifying as receiving a severed finger or strand of hair. Either way, for most people, receiving anything in the mail from a serial criminal would be abnormal, but not for Amanda and Rex Taylor's family. Rex's behavior and his willingness to communicate and receive experiences from known serial criminals and Amanda's obsession with crime has been confirmed by some horrifying revelations of past social media posts under her account. In several posts, Amanda glorifies a mass of criminals and their brutal attacks, including the mastermind behind the largest terrorist attack in American history, Timothy McVeigh, and two young men, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, who staged a mass crime at Collin High School. She aspired to become one of those ruthless criminals she idolized so much, and of course decided to start her career as a criminal with a vengeance. After a while, Amanda accused Rex's father, Charlie Taylor, of being responsible for her husband's death, claiming that he had not helped Rex get rid of his addiction to pills, but had instead accustomed his son to illegal substances. And the cynicism and cold-bloodedness with which she took revenge on her father-in-law, Charlie Taylor, will send shivers down your spine. To commit her first major murder, she needed an assistant who would unconditionally agree with her actions. She was afraid she wouldn't be able to do it all by herself the first time, and she needed a willing accomplice to back her up if she got scared. And one Amanda already had, of course, it was the man in love with her, Sean Ball. The day she would take control of him was only a matter of time. Sean soon became the willing accomplice Amanda was looking for. However, he had no idea what he was getting himself into. So, Sean and Amanda devised their sinister plan with military precision and put it into action. On a spring April afternoon in 2015, Amanda and Sean went to Charles Taylor's dilapidated home in nearby Ironton, Virginia, at exactly 3:27 in the afternoon, the number that marks Rex and Amanda's birthdates. Charles had to give her money to fill an Easter basket for her beloved grandchildren. They sat and talked sweetly for about 30 minutes. Then Amanda plopped down on the couch next to Charles, and it was as if a switch had been flicked in her head. Amanda's behavior changed dramatically. She violently began stabbing Charles with a knife, at which time Sean hit Charles in the head with a tire iron. Then, after stunning Charles, Amanda again deeply stabbed the knife into his chest. At this point, it was like she couldn't see anything around her from rage, and Charles just looked at her and asked, "What are you doing?" As she stabbed him, he reached out and grabbed her hair, but Amanda continued to stab him and he continued to scream. Amanda Taylor stabbed her father-in-law Charles Taylor 31 times with a sharp bayonet knife. Every time she looked into his eyes, it was important to her that he knew she was the one who was killing him, and she wanted to feel his last breath. She wanted death for Charles to be a personal revenge. She stopped as her rage began to subside and the entire room was splattered with blood. But Amanda didn't stop there. She did something even more outrageous by taking a picture of herself next to the body and posting the picture on her social media accounts. Later that day, Amanda's mother received a disturbing phone call from an unknown number. With Amanda's voice on the other end of the line, she confessed through tears how much she loved her mom and how precious everything she had done for her, and through her tears she shared that she had done what she had to do, and it was something very bad. Her mom sensed the situation and it was clear to her that something terrible had happened. She begged her daughter to come home to Christiansburg, but Amanda refused the idea and stated that she and Sean were on their way to Pittsburgh. It was no secret that Amanda was on a downward spiral, and it all started with a traumatic event that occurred almost 8 months ago when her husband Rex Taylor, who had struggled with depression and illicit substance abuse for several years, hanged himself. Authorities were subsequently shocked when they checked Amanda's social media profile. She was clearly very proud of the crime she had committed. Hoping for a quick resolution, the police issued a warrant for her arrest. However, by then, Amanda and Sean had already escaped. Amanda and Sean took a rather scenic route to escape, as if they were not on the run but planning a wonderful vacation. They took the Blue Ridge Parkway from Virginia to North Carolina. Judging from the crime scene photos, which show the sheer brutality of the crime, the officers had great fears that the perpetrators would continue to kill. And they were right, for Amanda didn't stop there. However, Amanda was not going to go unpunished for her crimes. After carrying out her intended crimes, she planned to eventually punish herself as well. Nor did she seek to keep her deed a secret. Shortly after she went on the road with Sean Ball, she began publishing posts on social media, taking responsibility for the murder and explaining that she did it for her husband. But Amanda and Sean weren't just on the run. They were stalking their next victim. Having committed her first crime, which Amanda thought was perfect, she couldn't stop. She needed to keep killing. At a gas station, they withdrew cash, filled up the car, and proceeded to Tennessee. Sean tried to talk Amanda into stopping and just going on the run, hiding, laying low. But Amanda, having tasted blood, was determined to fulfill her desire to commit another crime, and she would come very close. They stocked up on ammunition at a sporting goods store, then stopped at a Fleabag motel in Tennessee. After spending the night in a roadside motel, they left the next day to fulfill Amanda's bloody wish. Along the way, Amanda notices 2 young girls at a rest stop on Blue Ridge Boulevard, who could be her next victims. She told Sean that she was going to bring these girls in so he could shoot them. They needed money, and he agreed, so Amanda went out to lead them to the car. But when she brought them in, Sean refused to shoot them. Amanda was furious. She got back in the car and drove away. Unable to calm down, she stopped the car in the driveway and pounced on her accomplice. Sean was now in her sights. Amanda pulled a revolver out of the glove compartment, got out of the car, and walked to the passenger side where Sean sat with his eyes closed in terror. She was so beyond furious, but she spotted a random jogger right in front of her, and quickly pointed the gun at him and pulled the trigger. As luck would have it, Amanda missed, and the sound of the gunshot made Sean open his eyes and come to his senses. He saw that the muzzle of the revolver was pointed at him. Amanda said that before she killed him, she wanted him to know that she was only using it for the gun and the car. She then pulled the trigger, shooting Sean right in the face. Amanda took a picture of Sean's bloody face to post on social media and drove off, leaving him bleeding on the side of the road from the gunshot wound. Now she was on the run alone. They had guns, firearms, they had stolen them from a relative's house, and they had already bought ammunition and magazines for the same weapon, said Police Captain New. They both seemed to be in agreement on what was going to happen, and it was going to start with the murder of Charles Taylor. Police were on the trail, and Amanda continued to post notes. In her next social media post, she revealed that she took Sean's life. While at a traffic stop in a field, Amanda took a picture of a silver revolver in her lap and posted it to Instagram with a caption. The post was more like a suicide note. "Okay, it's about that time. I'm gonna find my husband in hell and finally find peace. I love you, Mom, and my beautiful children. And I know you will give them the life I could never give them. I will finally be free." The cops were actively monitoring Amanda's account in hopes of tracking her down, And they did. Surveillance video from gas stations along the route of the white SUV the perpetrators fled in also helped police get on the trail. Cell tower signals were able to locate Amanda on a North Carolina state highway. Patrol officers spotted the white SUV heading east on I-40 near Asheville when she tried to stop. No matter how much she ran, she didn't give up without a fight. Law enforcement prepared. They knew she was armed and extremely dangerous. This reality was further reinforced by another sobering social media post that surfaced later that day that said, "Okay, the time is about to come when I find my husband in hell and finally become one with him." In her photo, Amanda looks smug, like she's proud of what she's done. After a 2-mile stretch of spikes that were strategically placed in Amanda's path, eventually all the destruction and chaos was over. Amanda was taken into custody around 8 o'clock the next morning. Police officers pulled Amanda out of the car and handcuffed her. Sean was found dying on the side of the road by paramedics. In the interrogation room, Amanda acted as if she didn't care about what was happening. She was sipping a soft drink and playing with her hair before Captain Robert New and another detective walked in. When questioned, Amanda waived her right to remain silent and confessed to everything. She really did look like she felt at home. After talking to the investigators, Amanda learned that Sean wasn't dead. The bullet had gone right through his jaw, causing him to pass out from the pain, but otherwise leaving no marks on him. Then, in a blood-chilling revelation, Amanda announced that she wanted to go to the death chamber. "Do you have a choice? I would prefer just the death penalty," Amanda says in the interrogation tape. "I kill people. I deserve to die. It would be better if I just go. It would be better for my children if I could just get the death penalty and go." Then, in a stunning turn of events, Amanda found herself recanting her words and pleading not guilty in front of the court. But at the trial, Amanda did recount her crime in great detail and insisted that she had done the right thing in taking the life of old Charles, who had taken Rex from her. She said that at first she'd been very angry with Rex for doing that to her, but then she'd been more angry with his father. Amanda admitted that she wanted Charles to feel the same pain that she had felt. Her argument was that she had killed Charles because she blamed him for the death of her husband Rex, whom Charles had allegedly given illegal substances to, according to Amanda. And the moment Charles started talking about Rex again, Amanda looked at him and started stabbing him, and it became the most alive thing she had felt since Rex had died. She admitted that she was very happy in those moments when the knife entered her father-in-law. Finally, Amanda vented all of her accumulated hatred and anger. She did it to get attention, and by not pleading guilty, she got the opportunity to talk about the case, said Captain Robert New. Amanda's explanation is disgusting. After all, she compares the feeling of the crime to a happy memory. At the November 2015 trial, the jury heard how Amanda stabbed Charles 31 times, and that she aimed for his face and chest. It took the jury just 30 minutes to find Amanda Taylor guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison. The judge called her the epitome of evil. As part of the plea bargain, Sean Ball agreed to a suspended 60-year sentence after 41 years in prison. Sean admitted that he is not worthy of sympathy and is completely remorseful for what he did. But there is a guilt that he has to live with every day and wonder what caused this to happen in his life. Sean Ball was jailed for 41 years after admitting to second-degree murder as part of a plea bargain. The 60-year prison sentence was suspended, except that Ball had to serve 41 years and 1 month. Amanda recently appealed her conviction and lost. She said she plans to appeal her conviction to the Supreme Court if she has to. Obviously, Amanda didn't become a serial offender, but she gained notoriety as a killer selfie taker. Amanda Taylor made a heartbreaking confession during a phone interview for a popular show from prison. When asked about why she took selfies with her body, she said, "I was just really excited and thought I wanted to take a picture so I could post it and show everyone. It made me really happy, finally." She said she has absolutely no remorse for what she did to Charles Taylor, because she did exactly what she wanted to do. Amazingly, during this time, she gave a local reporter a phone interview in which she compared the thrill of being stabbed to riding a roller coaster. She said, "It was like my first roller coaster ride because of all the nerves and the feeling of freedom. That's how I felt. It wasn't what I had in mind at all. is not what you see in the movies. It's a real animal sensation. Amanda Taylor had committed a terrible crime and wanted more. People who knew Amanda Taylor described her as a very dark and sinister woman who was obsessed with death, crime, and serial offenders from a young age. Her social media pages were filled with images of bizarre death scenes. If any woman has ever gone insane, it's Amanda Taylor, and it's so often the case that it wasn't supposed to happen. The people who loved her tried their best to stop her madness, and the people she turned to for help turned a blind eye. Now, Amanda is being punished for all the destruction she was so encouraged by. This is how the career of Amanda Taylor, who dreamed of becoming a famous serial criminal, ended. Each of us goes through different phases in life, going through our own traumas and experiences. And when we look at bad heroes, learn about their past, we unwittingly try it on ourselves. Admit it. Have you ever dreamed of killing the neighbor who listens to music loudly at night or pisses you off because he parks in your spot? But reconsider the story and better just shout by the lake or in the woods. They say it calms and returns moral balance. This story is set in Spokane, Washington, the second largest city in the state. As beautiful and attractive to tourists as the city may be on the outside, it can be just as dangerous to its residents. According to the state, Spokane County has the highest crime rate in Washington, twice the state average. So the tale of young Cinderella has a beautiful exterior and a bitter flavor inside. The Holden family, a typical American family, had lived in Spokane for a long time. They adored children, so the house was always full of them. Judy and John Holden had 2 daughters and an adopted son, Joshua. The adult daughters had long since left the family and lived on their own. Their only son, Joshua, however, remained with his parents. Large, melancholic, and always frowning young man could not create his own family and therefore reluctantly stayed at his parents' house. The desire to have a stable income in the form of significant benefits forced the Holden family to take more than 1 and not 2 children from the orphanage. Thus, one day, a sweet little girl named Courtney appeared in the Holden family. Courtney Corn Holden was born on February 28, 1992, and 2 years later found herself in an orphanage. Children of different ages dreamily prayed to the Almighty to give them a mom and dad, and one joyful day the girl's wish came true. Little Courtney went to Spokane. Courtney began living with Joshua and several other foster children. When the door closed behind her, the girl's dreams of a caring and loving family remained only dreams. If in the orphanage Courtney's life seemed sad and joyless, at the Holdens it turned into a real nightmare. From a very young age, she was forced to do all sorts of chores around the house. She had to clean the whole house, wash the dishes for all the family members after every meal. What was especially surprising was that the Holdens treated the other foster children much better, and no one could understand the reason for their hatred of this sweet girl. Judy Holden had reached a respectable age by then, and Courtney was the last child they had taken from the orphanage. Perhaps that was the source of their inexplicable anger. Courtney was even forbidden to go outside without permission. People who visited their home often heard Judy and Joshua mistreat Courtney, calling her Cinderella, as if she were a fairy tale character who in real life was a slave to her stepmother and evil sisters. Courtney found herself in a similar role, however. The girl turned out to be very responsive, and over the years of living with the Holdens got used to harsh conditions. She was afraid of her foster mother, and her brother Joshua inspired terror in her with his mere presence. He forbade her from socializing with her peers, and she had no cell phone or other modern conveniences. She never left the house without need or permission. She only got a breath of fresh air, like socializing with neighbors, when the house was empty by going out into the backyard. Courtney's upbringing took place in just such an environment. Over time she grew up and just got used to her life. She didn't become embittered, always treating her foster parents with respect, because she didn't know any other life and had no idea of a normal family. Courtney found some freedom when Joshua, due to irreconcilable differences with his parents, moved in with his sister for a significant amount of time. For Courtney, it was the happiest period of her life. She finally got a long-awaited taste of freedom, free to leave the house, go for walks, and meet her peers. Time passed. Courtney graduated from high school and fell in love for the first time. Michael turned out to be a worthy partner for her. She felt care and attention from a man she had never received from anyone before. After each meeting, Courtney was over the moon with happiness. Their relationship lasted until 2011 when they had a son. Michael in despair begged his beloved to move to him and live a full family, but for an unknown reason, the young mother refused him and did not move, continuing to live in the house Holden and stopped all romantic relationships with Michael. By then, the Holden home was empty. The foster children had grown up and moved away. John Holden, Courtney's foster father, had passed away, so for a long time she lived only with her foster mother Judy. Michael was only allowed to visit his son with Judy's permission. During the period when Courtney's brother Joshua was away, their life with their son was quite peaceful. But after his father's death in 2014, Joshua returned and began to control the family home fiercely. He installed multiple surveillance cameras around their home on Hero Avenue, about a block from Rogers Middle School in northeast Spokane. There were signs scattered throughout the yard that read, "Smile, you're being filmed," and several cameras pointed in different directions. The security cameras made Courtney anxious again, for she knew that going outside could get her in trouble from Joshua for running away. Courtney's life once again became unbearable. Around 2015, Courtney confessed to a neighbor that she was once again forbidden to have a cell phone, keep social media accounts, communicate with anyone outside the family, drive, or even leave the house without Joshua's permission. The birth of Courtney's son made Joshua Holden so angry that he forced her to cut off all contact with Michael. Courtney silently complied. Neighbors noticed bruises on Courtney's face and arms, and when asked about their origin, she frankly admitted, "Joshua beats me." Concerned neighbors wondered why Courtney tolerates such treatment, and tried to help her in every way possible. They contacted the police to draw attention to Courtney's distress, but the Holdens managed to keep the case quiet each time. Eventually, Courtney was stripped of the privilege of interacting with the neighbors, who have since seen her outside only in the evenings, as she was not allowed to go out during the day. Courtney again silently complied. No one knew Joshua like Courtney did. A tall, large, and obese man, he possessed tremendous physical strength and never held back in his insults. Joshua's friends described him as a man with paranoid tendencies, violent and unpredictable by nature. He once publicly bragged about his ability to easily cut short a life and effortlessly dispose of a body. He had a notable criminal history. In 2005, he was charged with assault and harassment, but due to lack of evidence and the victim's unwillingness to cooperate with the police, he was released. In 2003, he was also suspected of assaulting a woman and misconduct, but the perpetrator could not be identified. In 2006, Joshua was arrested for assaulting his mother and for burglary. These incidents forced him to leave his parents' home for several years. Upon returning, Joshua became even more ferocious. He installed cameras not only outside, but also inside the house to completely control Courtney. The young mother almost stopped socializing with friends, saying she was afraid to go anywhere for fear Joshua would find out and things would get worse. One person communicated with Courtney every day via Facebook until Joshua found out she had an account. "I have to leave. I have to leave. Josh is coming," she wrote in her last message almost 2 years ago. After that, her account was permanently blocked. Acquaintances described the dynamics within the Holden family as peculiar. People familiar with the family have been perplexed as to why Courtney's son calls Judy mom and Joshua is referred to as dad, while his biological mother is referred to exclusively by her first name, leading some to speculate that perhaps Joshua is actually the boy's father. Neighbors and acquaintances have condemned the Holdens for their unusual lifestyle and antisocial behavior, preferring to stay away from their home. In August 2018, after another argument, Courtney hurriedly packed her belongings into a suitcase and ran outside. A furious Judy yelled after her, "Come home," to which Courtney replied, "I'm not staying here anymore." Moments later, an enraged Joshua, over 6 feet tall and weighing 300 pounds, forcibly picked Courtney up and carried her back into the house. Judy slammed the door shut. According to the neighbor, she was unable to resist. That was the last time this neighbor, and possibly the rest of the family, saw Courtney, a young woman who had lived a life of invisibility. She still was It took nearly 2 years before neighbors and acquaintances began to worry about her disappearance. In October 2019, a year and a half after her disappearance, concerns about Courtney Holden's whereabouts were expressed by Michael and his current girlfriend. They hadn't seen Courtney in almost 2 years, and the father was anxious to see his son. The father of Courtney's son filed a missing persons report with the police. On October 24th, police officers, armed with a search warrant, went to the Holden's home and were surprised to find that Courtney was indeed not there. Neither Joshua nor Judy wanted to cooperate with authorities. Courtney's stepmother allowed the detectives to look into her room, but then asked them to leave the house as soon as possible. Search dogs were even brought in, but to no avail. The Holdens claimed Courtney abandoned her son and ran away. They were unable to explain who may have continued to cash Social Security benefits into her account, or who was using electronic food stamps. However, on the same day the Holdens' home was searched, Judy and Joshua withdrew the remaining $600 from Courtney's bank account. Coincidence? The next day, an unidentified woman identified herself as Courtney and called the National Crime Information Center of America. She stated that she was safe and did not want to be found. Police traced the call and identified the woman as one of Courtney's half-sisters. Later, Joshua and Judy told many conflicting stories about Courtney's disappearance. They once claimed she had run off with a truck driver, while another version said it was a secret lover she was hiding from everyone. Courtney's absence, and the ever-changing testimony of those she lived with, made the Holdens suspect. Clearly having something to hide, Joshua and Judy Holden hastily left Spokane in late October 2019. Their flight only convinced detectives of their involvement in Courtney's disappearance. The Holdens were tracked down in Texas at the home of one of Judy's adopted daughters. Authorities were able to charge them with cashing benefits intended for Courtney as well as identity theft, which led to their arrest and incarceration in a Texas jail. In early October, the Spokane Police Department attempted to check on Courtney's welfare, but that quickly turned into a missing persons case, which was turned over to Major Crimes Detective Randy Lesser. Lesser gave an update on the investigation after the search warrants he filed in Spokane County Superior Court became known. This account of Courtney's disappearance and the investigation is based on police interviews and court documents. Courtney was officially reported missing. Alerts were sent out to all states, and several news programs broadcast about the case, which began an active search. When patrol officers and detectives visited the home for various reasons, Joshua and Judy Holden refused to cooperate with the investigation. Unusual behavior when it comes to welfare checks and missing persons cases. On the day Courtney was reported missing, a woman who gave her name called Crime Check and said she was okay. The police dispatcher also spoke to the woman posing as Courtney. It was later revealed that it was actually Courtney's sister, who wouldn't tell Lesser why she was impersonating her, presumably to draw suspicion away from Judy and end the search. "It bothers me that she might be dead," Lesser said in an interview. Lesser expressed particular concern about Joshua's past. Joshua had been charged with assault in the past, but the case was dropped shortly before trial when the victim stopped cooperating with the prosecution. Investigators were in the process of obtaining DNA evidence, and court documents in the case indicated Holden was a suspect in another assault in 2003. Neighbors and family members described Joshua as unstable, violent, and diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Neighbors mentioned that Joshua was unemployed and Judy was afraid of him. Joshua had also been arrested on unlawful imprisonment charges and was convicted of burglary. Family members said Joshua and Judy bragged to them about knowing ways to hide from police, and Joshua talked about how easy it would be to end a person's life and hide the body. "People don't just disappear, especially if they have a son," Lesser noted. Court documents say Courtney was a loving mother who would never abandon her son. For a year and a half, Courtney was not seen outside her home, with Joshua and Judy telling neighbors and relatives that she was traveling with a boyfriend, an unnamed truck driver whom no one knew. Sometimes there were rumors that she had eloped with her fiancé. Other times she was supposedly just at the house but not available for visits. Judy told Lesser that Courtney had only been home a few days when he knocked on their door in early October. According to her, Courtney left on foot with her son. According to court documents, when Lesser asked Judy for her phone number, She closed the door in his face. She then reluctantly let police officers inside to look into Courtney's room. She was very nervous, Lesser said. The house was extremely cluttered, with piles of belongings taking up every available space, Lesser wrote in court documents. Courtney's room was also cluttered, and the mattress lay bare. It gave the impression that no one lived there, Lesser noted. At one point, Judy panicked, losing sight of one of the detectives behind the closed door. She ordered the investigators to leave when Lesser asked them to check the rest of the house for Courtney's son. Later that day, neighbors told Lesser that they saw Joshua, Judy, and one of Courtney's sisters leave in a van with the boy. Detective Lesser also found it suspicious that Courtney, who suffered from a chronic medical condition, had not seen a doctor since October 2017. She received her last prescription in July 2018, although she had been receiving medication every month prior to her disappearance. Despite the gaps in her medical records, money continued to be withdrawn from Courtney's bank account every month, and her card was used for groceries. Surveillance footage confirmed that Joshua and Judy were shopping with the boy. The cameras also recorded the couple withdrawing the remaining money from Courtney's bank account on the day she was reported missing in early October. By October 24th, Joshua and Judy had left their home. Lesser wrote that the DVR from the home surveillance system had been removed, and the family's 6 pets were gone when police arrived to execute a search warrant. The cell phone numbers associated with Joshua and Judy were deactivated in mid-November, but 2 new numbers with Texas area codes were activated the same day. About a month after the Holdens left, a neighbor called police to report activity at the house. It was one of Judy's daughters and her husband, who had flown in from Texas to check on the house. They said they hadn't seen Courtney in 2 years, and that Judy had retired. The man told police that Joshua and Judy had a child together, but Judy's daughter claimed the boy was Courtney's son. In mid-December, Lesser traveled to Texas to search for Joshua and Judy. Police found them at Judy's daughter's home along with Courtney's son. Joshua and Judy Holden were arrested on charges of identity theft, custody interference, and using Courtney's bank accounts and hiding her son. The boy was found safe and sound, and was successfully returned to his father. No charges were filed against other family members. Police searched Judy's home in Spokane with search dogs, but unfortunately found no trace of Courtney. A search of a home in Texas also yielded no clues as to Courtney's whereabouts. Officers also searched a car and trailer belonging to Judy parked in an RV parking lot in Oklahoma. Joshua, 40, and Judy, 74, were in jail in Texas, where they declined to be interviewed by police. They refused to be extradited to Spokane, so police were awaiting a warrant from the governor for their return. Because police could not prove their involvement in Courtney's disappearance, they were likely released. This is probably one of the most in-depth missing person cases, Lesser says of the months-long investigation. I have 4 notebooks full of different information. Judy and Joshua still claim they had nothing to do with Courtney's disappearance, and police believe she is likely dead. But unfortunately, there is no way to prove it yet. Despite the aforementioned allegations, Judy and Joshua have not been charged with anything. Many still believe that they know what happened to Courtney. In addition to being known for his violent behavior, Joshua has also stated that he could end a person's life and successfully hide the body from the police. Investigators believe Courtney is dead, but have yet to make any arrests related to her case. To summarize today's story, Courtney was unlucky enough to be part of the Holden family, and this young girl who dreamed of family and love lacked the courage to stand up for herself. She truly believed that even these people who yelled at her, mistreated her, and forced her to work for them were her family. But is it necessary to defend oneself against one's own family? It is deeply unfortunate that Joshua Holden's bold statements in public about ending his life and hiding his body cannot be used as proof of his involvement in Courtney's disappearance, especially since she was never seen again after that fateful evening when he forcibly took her into the house, and no one knows what she went through during those terrible moments, or what atrocities these monsters who called themselves family were doing behind closed doors. There are countless ways to discreetly dispose of a body, using various chemicals that neither experts nor police dogs can detect. This suggests that if Courtney did suffer that night, her spirit still resides at Holden Manor, where she looked for family, but instead found her doom. Her son was taken from the Holden family and placed in his father's care, where he remains to this day. Courtney Holden is still missing in action. If you have any information that may assist the investigation, please contact the Spokane Police Department. Truth is something that exists in reality and corresponds to the real state of affairs, but sometimes it is difficult to accept the truth, and a person creates a lie which sincerely begins to believe and convince others. 11 young men and 1 girl met in a hotel room to celebrate the new year. Strange collaboration, you will think, and you will be right. But wait, there is one fact that will completely change your opinion. The men at this party are all members of a sexual minority, which means that 12 friends just met to have fun and celebrate the year 2021. And indeed, they celebrated the new year very cheerfully, so much so that on January 1st, the company had to take the only girl to the hospital, where doctors declared her death. But who was she? How did she die, and was anyone charged in connection with her death? But that's all in order. Next, let's break down the past party almost minute by minute, see what happened on the fateful night, and you'll definitely understand why we started this story with the notion of truth. So on December 31st, 2020, in Manila, the capital of the Philippines, at the 4-star City Garden Grand Hotel, John Paul de Lucerne checked in at 11 a.m. Christine de Serra checked in later. And during the day, 9 other guys checked into room 2207 and room 2209, which were on the same floor. Hotel manager John Paul Khalili joined the merry company just after midnight. New Year's Eve night was all about fun, dancing and alcohol, lots of alcohol. Rommel Galita woke up around 10 a.m. and noticed Christine sleeping in the bathtub. He covered her with a blanket and went back to sleep. When he woke up several hours later, he found her unconscious and beginning to turn blue. Christine was taken to the hospital by 3 friends and hotel staff, but upon arrival at the emergency room, doctors only pronounced her dead. The 11 guys with the only girl spent the entire night in the hotel room, and she was dead by morning. News headlines about the crime shocked the public. Everyone imagined the story the same way, because it was obvious what a group of young guys and 1 girl could do all night. But what really happened that New Year's Eve night, and from what Christine de Serra died, was to be solved by the investigation. Christine Angelica de Serra was born on April 13, 1997, into the well-to-do family of John Nestor de Serra and Sharon Rose Faba de Serra, and grew up in Barangay San Isidro, General Santos City. She grew up an outgoing, intelligent, and independent girl. Christine was a loving sister to her 3 siblings, Monica, Chloe, and JJ. After graduating from high school, she moved to the larger and more promising city of Davao, on the shores of bay of the same name. There she enrolled in university. Christine studied diligently, danced, modeled, and was active on social media. Christine was also the epitome of beauty and intelligence. In 2017, she graduated with honors from the University of the Philippines Mindanao, in Davao City, where she earned a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Arts with a major in Media Arts. The girl has been actively involved in modeling and theatrical performances. On August 5, 2017, she competed against 8 other contenders for the title of Miss Silva Davao 2017 at the New City Commercial Corporation Mall in Davao City. She came in 2nd place. In June 2018, she participated in the annual fashion show. From September 2017 to January 2019, she worked as a marketing consultant for Gaisano malls in different parts of Mindanao, including Davao City, General Santos City, Tagum, Torreal, and Digos. Christine's life has been colorful and fulfilling. In February 2019, her life's dream came true. She moved to Manila to start working as a flight attendant for PAL Express, a subsidiary of Philippine Airlines. Christine de Serra's last flight as a flight attendant was on December 28, 2020. Christine's death was immediately publicized, due to which numerous discussions and theories were formed in the community. Initially, the police suspected that Christine was most likely abused and killed by a group of guys she was partying with on New Year's Eve. Even without autopsy results and a toxicology report, Makati City Police filed preliminary charges of assault and murder against 11 men. The Philippine National Police declared the case closed. Arrests were made with charges and identification of suspects. 3 of the party participants were detained after surrendering to authorities on their own. But the main answer to what really caused Christine's death was the forensic medical report. The autopsy of Christine's body was conducted in Pasay City at the Rizal Funeral Home, under the direction of Forensic Medical Officer Police Major Michael Nick Sargento. On January 3, 2021, the examination of Christine Desire's body was completed, and a forensic report was issued which found that death was due to natural causes due to a ruptured aortic aneurysm. However, it also mentioned bruises on the girl's right arm, right thigh, knees, ankles, and right foot, as well as a linear abrasion on her right thigh. Deeply healed lacerations and abrasions were also reported during the genital exam. The National Capital Region Police Department announced that a special investigation team had been set up to look into the case. But Christine's family was unwilling to accept the fact that a young, vibrant girl could die a natural death prematurely. At a press conference on January 5, 2021, Christine Desire's family stated that they had seen the autopsy report that said she died of an aneurysm. However, they stated that the autopsy performed was incomplete and requested a second autopsy. The parents of the deceased have been trying to understand how Christine's aorta was ruptured. After all, the police and the Desire family lawyer believed that the aneurysm was the result of assault or abuse, which means it was not a natural death, and the perpetrators should be punished. The prosecutor's office identified all of the 11 men who were with Christine throughout the night. Some of them were her co-workers. Other young men were friends of her friends whom Christine was meeting for the first time. It turned out that Christine was the initiator of this party. She had booked the hotel room herself a few days in advance and coordinated this party with her friends. Her mom, Sharon, was aware of her daughter's friendship with men and never opposed it. Since childhood, Christine had found it easier to socialize and make friends with the male gender, so it was considered normal in their family. In addition, she and her friends usually did not go home for vacations, so it became a tradition for them to meet each other every year. Christine was able to call her family just after midnight to inform them of the ongoing celebration at the Makati Hotel, and to wish her family a happy new year. During the video call, the family could see Christine's friends and the surrounding festive environment. However, there has been new speculation about the abuse allegation, so in the case, the main evidence of the incident became the frames of the video from the hotel lobby, the study of which helped the police almost minute by minute to reconstruct the picture of what happened. It should be noted that the party was to be held in room 2209. It was this room and booked Christine Dacra. The main events begin to unfold in the late afternoon. At 11:21 p.m., Christine leaves room 2209 and goes to room 2207. At 11:38 p.m., the company returns to their room. Christine goes last. She is holding her shoes in a glass. At 2:50 a.m., Christine, holding the hand of a new acquaintance, Valentine, goes to room 2207. While they are at a neighbor's house, a hotel employee brings an extra mattress to room 2209. At 2:52 a.m., Valentine accompanies Christine to her room. Valentine's gait shows that the girl is already quite drunk. Her gait is too relaxed, and she is holding a bottle in her hand. The friends stop at the door, and Christine suddenly kisses Valentine, but the man quickly pulls away, after which the couple goes inside. At 3:15 a.m., Christine hurriedly leaves her room and goes to her neighbor's room, and 6 minutes later, one of the guys leaves there. He heads to room 2209, presumably to call his friends. At 3:22 a.m., Christine Dacra can be seen chatting with another man in the next room on the right side of the hallway, while 2 other men walk past them. She looked upset. Suddenly, Christine hugs one of her friends, and then they disappear from the view of the cameras altogether. At 4:13 a.m., John de la Cerne can be seen carrying Christine back to the first room. At 4:22 a.m., the camera again captures Christine at the door of room 2207. It's unclear what brought her there again. She practically falls off her feet, and a guy who looks like John de la Cerne picks her up by the waist and carries her to room 2209. Christine looks pretty drunk. At 5:05 a.m., the camera captures Christine laughing as she runs away from a guy who looks like Luis de Lima. Afterward, They're standing outside room 2207. Christine looks normal, and with him she enters room 2209. At 6:23 a.m., Christine makes her last appearance on camera alive. For the last time, Valentin carries her in his arms from room 2207. The girl is conscious. It was obviously an eventful night, but the most important truth still remains behind the scenes. The party continued until dawn. Around 12 noon, when Christine was found unconscious in the bathtub, her friends carried her to the floor and repeatedly attempted cardiopulmonary resuscitation. After unsuccessful attempts, they called for help at the front desk. A few minutes later, the hotel manager and the head of security arrived in the room. They used a wheelchair to lower Christine to the first floor of the hotel. Rommel Galito accompanied Christine to the hospital. The doctors unfortunately only stated the girl's death. Rommel called Christine's mom and broke the bad news. It can be assumed that what is happening really looks like a fun party, and definitely to be in one room such a large company was cramped, so young people chaotically moved all night from room to room. But the investigators had suspicions about the use of illegal substances to enhance the effect of alcohol. When questioned, some of the detainees claimed that there were no illegal substances during the party, but only whiskey and tequila. It is worth noting that illegal drugs were initially the centerpiece of the investigation, as the testimony of one of the detainees reported that Christine had doubts about the contents of the drinks and suggested that someone may have spiked it with an unknown substance. It transpired that guests were asked to bring their own food and drinks. Because of this, there was speculation that Christine Dasser's drink was poisoned and could have triggered the aneurysm that eventually led to her death. But the autopsy report stated that no alcohol or illegal drugs taken the night before her death would cause this type of aortic dilatation or defect. Substance information was later unconfirmed, as no illegal substances or traces of them were found in the room or in the suspect's personal belongings. An examination and search of the two rooms, as well as the neighboring room 2009, looking for potential evidence did not yield the desired results that at least indirectly proved the violent death of Christine de Serna. Under questioning, Marc Rosales and John de la Serna publicly admitted their unconventional orientation and stated that Christine was their best friend and they would never hurt her. John also revealed that they had to bring Christine back from room 2207 because she was already vomiting early in the morning. Rommel Galito said that around 10 a.m., he found Christine in the bathtub of their room and thought she was asleep, so he just covered her with a blanket. However, around noon after he woke up and went back to wake her up, he realized the girl was blue and not breathing. He rushed to his friends for help. The hotel advised that she be rushed to Makati Medical Center where she was pronounced dead on arrival, reportedly due to a ruptured aortic aneurysm. The hospital reported the death to the Makati City Police. Meanwhile, other men from a neighboring hotel room had left by then. On January 4th, the Philippine National Police sent a separate statement to the media about the Christine Dasser incident, saying that the case is almost solved despite some missing details and conflicting reports on the matter. Police Chief Debold Sinas said they already have 3 suspects and they have been apprehended. Other suspects were being sought, but as early as January 6th, the Makati City Prosecutor's Office ordered the release of the 3 men who were in custody due to lack of evidence. Prosecutors insisted that evidence presented was insufficient to establish that Christine was abused. They also said that even if Christine Dasser was abused, the police have yet to prove that this is what caused her death. Moreover, the party was a gathering of men of non-traditional orientation, where they were all flirting with each other, and Christine was an extra woman. Rommel Galito, as well as most of those present at the party, were stewards and co-workers of Christine Dasser at PL Airlines, indicating that she was well acquainted with these men and their orientation. On January 13, 2021, the Makati City Prosecutor's Office launched a preliminary investigation, and based on an official autopsy that confirmed that the 23-year-old died from a ruptured aortic aneurysm, the prosecutor's office also called on the police to release the results of the victim's DNA analysis, toxicology report, and histopathic study. However, Christine's mother, Sharon Dasser, criticized the report that her daughter was not abused. She appeared on a news show where she claimed that her daughter was abused by a group of guys. If you see Christine's body, if you're a mother, you'll probably feel the pain that Christine suffered because of them, but my daughter can't talk anymore because she's dead. The woman spoke out on the TV program. Sharon cited the lacerations and bruises on her daughter's body, which were not recorded in the autopsy, as evidence that the report was inaccurate. Christine's family later said they wanted another autopsy to challenge authorities' initial findings that she died a natural death. The basis was injuries and bruising that were not documented in the first report. Family spokesperson Brick Reyes said that the injuries on the victim's legs and arms, as well as her remains, would provide sufficient evidence that Christine was abused. Brick Reyes also said that they believed the young woman was drugged and abused before she died. Christine was already intoxicated and complained that something seemed to have been spiked in her drink during the New Year's Eve celebration. Christine's parents said they have filed a complaint demanding the immediate dismissal of Michael Nick Sarmiento for gross negligence and gross incompetence in preparing Christine's forensic report and death certificate. Dr. Marisay Ramos, a friend of Dacer's family, told reporters that the body was subjected to a second autopsy. He also emphasized that the biological fluids recovered from the second autopsy have been forwarded to the Death Investigation Unit, which will provide more details after a final evaluation and consolidation of all the findings of its forensic team. The pathology autopsy results from the Southern Police District Crime Lab Division's forensic report, which was eventually shared on social media, showed that the cause of death was consistent with what was previously reported as a ruptured aortic aneurysm. The official autopsy revealed that Christine was not abused on the night of her death. The actual cause of Dacer's death lies in the aorta. The constant increase in blood pressure in the aorta caused the defect to weaken, and eventually the aorta ruptured, the Philippine National Police Crime Lab report said. At the time the aorta rupture occurred, there was blood loss, so Christine felt various symptoms such as weakness, nausea, and sweating. The blood loss due to the aortic rupture killed her within a few hours, the report said. This means that the girl had a ruptured aortic aneurysm which enlarged the lower part of the main vessel, aorta, that supplies blood to the entire body. This vessel runs from a person's heart through the chest and abdomen. Since the aorta is the largest vessel in the body, if it ruptures, a person can lose a huge amount of blood and potentially be fatal, as in this case. In addition, it was noted that Christine's aneurysm did not occur recently. It started a long time ago. The report states that dilatation is a chronic condition and was present long before her death. Had she not died that fateful night, she would still have died in any scenario that would cause her blood pressure to rise enough to rupture the aneurysm. The autopsy also revealed that Dacer's heart was enlarged compared to a healthy heart, further confirming Christina Dacer's undiagnosed hypertension. For the most part, it can be confirmed that the girl's death was due to natural causes, but the widespread misinformation brought shame and persecution to those 11 young guys who were at the party and sincerely tried to give Christine first aid, but they were labeled as criminals. All 11 guys who were charged preliminarily have since been released from custody. The Makati City Prosecutor's Office tried to rectify the situation and said that at the time of the publicity, the evidence presented was not enough to establish that Christine Dacer was abused, and it was impossible to obtain proper evidence at that time. Therefore, they had to build a version based on signs of deterioration of the victim's body. In addition, 2 other suspects said that the police forced them to give false testimony that there were illegal drugs at the New Year's Eve party. Another participant in the story explained his kiss with Christine, which was captured by surveillance cameras on the eve of her death. According to the man, it was Christine herself who initiated it. He, however, tried to push her away. Law enforcement officials were criticized for not conducting a thorough toxicological examination when the flight attendant's body was found. The charges against the men were later dropped due to lack of evidence. The death of Christine Dacer attracted widespread media attention as a result of suspicious circumstances that seemed to contradict the findings of the Philippine National Police. Christine's case continued to receive a lot of publicity online as further developments came from her family, who in no way could accept the truth and believe in the natural death of their daughter. The girl's mother, Sharon, appealed to President Rodrigo Duterte for help in seeking justice for her daughter. I am an ordinary person. You also have a daughter. I want to speak out openly because I don't want anyone to be victimized by the kind of cruelty and barbarism like my Christine. Christine Dacer was buried at Forest Lake Memorial Park, in her hometown of General Santos, more than a week after her death. A wave of condolences, Reposts and farewells traveled across the social stanzas of Christine's friends and coworkers. Ultimately, the unconventional case of Christine Dassera serves as a prime example of when the media spreads misinformation and how it can affect the public as well as impact those involved. As we come to the end, the story wants to return to the truth, which sooner or later, but in any form, is bound to take its place of honor. After all, the truth is one. But Christine's family is still convinced that the girl was killed by these people, and that there is something secret in this story. Personally, I do not understand and found no answers to the question about bruises and wounds on Christine's body. Why was it hushed up? It seems that despite the presence of wounds and bruises on Christine's body, the cause of her death was not them, but the rupture of the aorta due to heart disease, so they did not focus on the wounds on her body. In my opinion, there are a lot of oddities and inconsistencies in this case, but you guys are the judge. I would like to wish Christine's family to accept the irreparable loss, because young guys, whether they are guilty or not, will end up remembering the same sad story every New Year's Eve and making excuses for the rest of their lives. Teenage love is one of the most intense, uncontrollable, and unpredictable feelings, capable of truly destructive power. It is the first conscious experience of tender and passionate sensations, triggered by hormonal changes, as well as shifts in social interactions between a teenager and those around them. However, everyone sees and experiences this delicate feeling in their own way. Since this is an age of rebellion, self-discovery, and a quest for self-affirmation, young people often resort to reckless actions to impress their significant other, win their attention, favor, and admiration. In the spring of 2017, a series of extremely brutal crimes occurred in the quiet and peaceful town of Lawrenceville, located in the state of Georgia. These crimes resulted in the deprivation of life of 2 people and left 4 others in mortal danger. An elderly couple was tortured and beaten to death for money. 2 students were severely injured, but miraculously survived, and prompt intervention by law enforcement helped stop the bloody spree, preventing the young offenders from completing what they had started. The story of these young criminals, 17-year-old Cassandra Bjorga and 19-year-old Johnny Ryder, was compared in the press to the plot of Romeo and Juliet, as the lovers wanted to end their lives together. However, they preferred to compare themselves to Bonnie and Clyde, even though they were not familiar with the history of the legendary criminal duo. The most terrifying aspect was that this criminal pair targeted members of their own families, aiming to rid themselves of all their loved ones. Love at first sight. Cassandra Bjorga and Johnny Ryder first met in late January 2017 in the company of mutual friends. At that time, Cassandra was 17 and still in school, while Johnny had just turned 19 and had already been married and divorced. He was not ready for family life, and the marriage was a forced measure because his underage girlfriend had become pregnant. However, the pregnancy ended prematurely and their union fell apart within half a year. When Johnny first saw Cassandra, he was captivated by her and fell head over heels in love at first sight. Despite her petite and attractive appearance, Cassandra was a bundle of powerful and unrestrained energy. She was seriously engaged in Tang Soo Do, Korean martial arts, as well as Taekwondo and Wushu. Bjorga had even participated in various competitions multiple times, but eventually quit training, claiming she lost her ability to concentrate due to emotional turmoil. In reality, the main reason was that the schoolgirl preferred partying with friends and had unhealthy habits incompatible with sports. The girl possessed a striking appearance and a slender figure, knew how to attract attention, and skillfully manipulated those around her, especially the boys who were in love with her. Many now doubt whether she truly loved Johnny or simply used him to achieve her terrible goals. However, the boy was clearly infatuated with her, ready to do anything for her, believing he had found his true love and soulmate. Ryder lived in his parents' house with his mother and 2 sisters, while his new girlfriend lived with her grandparents, who adored their only granddaughter. Almost immediately after meeting, a passionate romance ignited between the young couple, and they hurried to introduce their significant others to their relatives to demonstrate the seriousness of their intentions. However, their loved ones did not accept their choices, provoking their anger and putting themselves in mortal danger. It is likely that individually, this pair would never have committed a serious crime, let alone the deprivation of life of their family members. But in this criminal story, Too many factors coincided, ultimately leading to a horrific tragedy. Johnny shared his girlfriend's addiction to prohibited substances, was easily influenced and manipulated, while Cassandra was the generator of monstrous ideas that her boyfriend was willing to execute without question. What is known about Cassandra Bjorga? Cassandra Bjorga was born on January 19, 2000, in Peachtree Corners, Gwinnett County, Georgia. She was the only child of Amanda Sterling, who had her out of wedlock. Cassandra never knew her biological father and never had any contact with him, while her mother was more focused on her personal life than on raising her daughter. As a result, Cassandra had behavioral and aggression issues from a young age. When Cassandra turned 15, her mother married a man named Stephen. Her stepfather began showing an unhealthy interest in his young stepdaughter and made advances towards her. Cassandra tried to tell her mother about this, but she did not believe her, thinking that her daughter was making it all up since she was a pathological liar and constantly got into various troubles. The schoolgirl then called her grandparents, Wendy and Randall, and complained to them about what was happening. The elderly couple became seriously concerned about the situation and decided it would be better if their only granddaughter lived with them. Thus, in October 2015, the 15-year-old girl moved to Lawrenceville, to her grandparents' spacious two-story house. There, she had her own room, and her grandparents provided her with everything she needed, rarely denying her anything. Wendy and Randall believed that their love and care would help their granddaughter become better, but Cassandra skillfully took advantage of their kindness. She quit sports, skipped school, hung out with the wrong crowd, and regularly ran away from home. Additionally, she started stealing money from her relatives, spending it on alcohol and prohibited substances. On one occasion, when she couldn't get the amount she needed, she attacked her grandmother, threatening to end her life. Between October 2015 and March 2017, the Bjorga family called the police more than 30 times because Cassandra constantly ran away, disappeared without explanation, started fights, stole, and behaved aggressively. Under the influence of substances, she became unmanageable. Cassandra's behavior spiraled out of control after she began dating Johnny Ryder. She brought her boyfriend to her grandparents' house, stating that he would now live with them, but Wendy and Randall were firmly against it. A similar situation occurred when Johnny tried to bring Cassandra to his family's home to live with him. His mother and sisters opposed it and kicked the couple out. Soon after, the lovers decided that anyone who stood in the way of their relationship had to be eliminated. They planned to deal with Cassandra's grandparents, take all their savings, get rid of Johnny's relatives, seize their funds, visit Cassandra's mother and stepfather to settle scores with them, and then flee to Florida to spend everything they could get from the three houses. The brutal dealing with the grandparents. Cassandra knew exactly where a large sum of cash was kept in the house of her grandparents. In one of the rooms on the second floor, a small safe was stored in a closet, the password to which was unknown to Cassandra. The reason being, after noticing money disappearing and realizing their beloved granddaughter was stealing, Wendy and Randall began hiding it. Wendy was 63 years old, and her husband Randall had recently turned 64. They had been married for over 40 years, raised a daughter, acquired their dream home, and planned to grow old together. On the second floor, they occupied 2 adjacent bedrooms, each with its own bathroom. The elderly couple couldn't manage their granddaughter, but didn't want to return her to her mother or send her to juvenile detention because they believed she could be rehabilitated and didn't want to ruin her life. On the night of April 2, 2017, when the elderly couple had already gone to bed, Johnny entered the house, led in by Cassandra. Armed with kitchen knives and baseball bats, the couple climbed the stairs to the second floor. Cassandra entered her sleeping grandmother's room and stood by her bed while Johnny approached Randall and started hitting him with the bat. The elderly man didn't immediately realize what was happening. He was disoriented, frightened, and unable to defend himself. Johnny jumped on the bed, standing on his victim, and continued to hit him repeatedly. Meanwhile, Wendy woke up from the noise, hearing dull thuds and sounds similar to a muffled scream. In the darkness, she saw a figure by her bed and realized it was her granddaughter. She tried to get up but was immediately stabbed in the shoulder. The woman tried to defend herself, as evidenced by deep cuts on her hands, but the forces were unequal. Cassandra dragged her grandmother by the hair into the next room, where Johnny was cruelly dealing with her grandfather. The young couple tied the elderly pair with tape and continued to beat them, demanding the safe's code, threatening to end their lives if they didn't comply. Johnny held a knife to Randall's throat, but the elderly couple still hoped their granddaughter wouldn't dare to deprive her closest family members of life. However, a minute later, on Cassandra's command, her boyfriend started stabbing Randall in the stomach. Wendy cried out, begging them to stop, and gave the safe's code. Cassandra immediately ran to her grandmother's room to open the safe, and then, with a triumphant shout, waving a couple of thick envelopes of cash, she ran back to show her accomplice that they had succeeded and the safe was opened. However, the torture of the elderly couple didn't end there. Cassandra and her boyfriend continued to beat them, trying to get the passwords to their bank cards to take more money. Wendy and Randall likely realized they wouldn't be left alive and started saying their goodbyes and confessing their love for each other. Cassandra later recounted this during her interrogation, and it amused her greatly. After getting all the necessary information, the young monsters first finished off Randall with a knife to the neck in front of his wife. Then, dragging Wendy into the bathroom, they continued to deal with her. She was finished off with baseball bat blows to the head, done by her own granddaughter. At one point, Cassandra complained to Johnny that Wendy wouldn't die and still had a pulse. Then, Johnny slit the woman's throat to ensure there was no chance of survival. Party on the bones. After the brutal dealing with the elderly couple, their granddaughter and her friend continued living in the house with the two bodies decomposing in the rooms on the second floor. The young couple spent the stolen money, buying everything they wanted, including alcohol and various prohibited substances they could get their hands on. During interrogations, they confessed they wanted to try everything and now they could afford it. A few days later, Wendy's sister called the police, requesting a welfare check on her relatives who hadn't been in contact since April 1st, not answering calls and only sending text messages, which was unusual due to Wendy's poor eyesight. The messages stated that everything was fine and asked not to worry, but this only increased the concern. Law enforcement sent a patrol officer to the given address to check if everything was all right, but no one answered the door. At first glance, nothing seemed suspicious. No signs of a break-in, the mail had been collected, and neighbors saw the couple's car leaving for downtown in the morning. The officer concluded that the elderly couple had gone out on errands, and without a warrant to search the house, he left, reporting that he had done his job and noticed nothing strange. Meanwhile, the young perpetrators used the victim's car to go shopping. They bought food and alcohol daily, ordered restaurant delivery, and couldn't even finish all the food they bought, leaving the uneaten and spoiled items to rot in boxes scattered on the floor, tables, windowsills, and every surface in the house. When the cash started running out, they withdrew money from Wendy's bank card, but they couldn't find Randall's wallet with his cards. About a week after the crime against her grandparents, Cassandra and Johnny decided to throw a party at the house, inviting their friends. However, they faced a serious problem as the bodies on the second floor had significantly decomposed and were emitting a foul odor that was impossible to ignore. Johnny went to the garage and found 2 cans of construction sealant, deciding to seal the doors of the rooms where the remains were, but first they needed to mask the smell. They bought several liters of chlorine bleach from a hardware store and poured it over the bodies. Then, Johnny carefully sealed every crack around the door leading to the bathroom and did the same with the bedroom door. The couple called their friends, telling them that Cassandra's grandparents had left town for a few days, leaving her with a lot of money, and she planned to throw a big party with alcohol and something more fun. However, the story seemed very suspicious to their friends. Most of them knew how many times Wendy and Randall had called the police because they couldn't handle their granddaughter, so no one dared to attend this strange party. In the end, only a small, bad company of troubled teenagers gathered at the house, including those who could get prohibited substances, and agreed to do so for a reward. Even in a state of intoxication, the guests complained about the terrible smell, which Cassandra blamed on a clogged sewer. The next day, the perpetrators decided it was time to leave the house, as staying there had become unbearable. However, they were running out of cash and had nearly exhausted the funds from the card, so they needed more money for their escape. The plan to get it had been brewing for a while and now needed to be executed. But for this, more of their relatives had to lose their lives. An accidental victim saved the family. On Friday, April 7, 2017, the couple broke into the Ryder family home, as Johnny had keys. They arrived in the morning when Johnny's mother and sisters were at work and university. They managed to ransack the house and find some money and valuables to last them for a while. The perpetrators armed themselves with baseball bats and also bought bear spray, an aerosol similar to pepper spray, but much larger and more powerful. This special aerosol, used to repel aggressive bears, contains strong tear and irritant substances, causing chemical burns to the skin and mucous membranes, provoking severe coughing and intense pain. For a human, this weapon can be deadly. They knew approximately when each family member would return home. The plan was to attack and deprive them of life one by one and then escape with the loot. By Monday, no one would be looking for the mother and sisters, assuming they had gone away for the weekend, giving the perpetrators a couple of days head start. Johnny's younger sister, Melissa, was the first to come home after her university classes, but unexpectedly, she arrived with her boyfriend, whom she had invited over to be alone while no one was home. This complicated matters, but the criminals decided to stick to the plan and add another victim to their blacklist. When Melissa and her boyfriend entered and saw the mess, they realized there had been intruders, likely burglars. Melissa immediately ran to the phone to call the police, but didn't get the chance. The room began to fill with an acrid orange smoke that made their eyes water, their throats burn, and their skin feel like it was on fire. Suddenly, two figures armed with bats appeared, their faces covered with scarves, and began to beat the students. However, the victims unexpectedly put up serious resistance. A fight ensued, and the attackers, not expecting the bear spray to be so powerful, began to choke themselves. In the midst of the struggle, the front door suddenly opened, and the homeowner, Johnny's mother, who had returned from work earlier than usual, appeared. She screamed and called 911, while the perpetrators managed to escape through the kitchen door. During the attack, Cassandra dropped the car keys they had come with, but Johnny, during the robbery, had grabbed spare keys to his mother's car, which they used to flee, abandoning the main evidence, a vehicle registered to the late Randall. The couple didn't expect Melissa to come home with her boyfriend, as attacking and ending the lives of two strong young people at once was no easy task. Although the criminals immediately decided to eliminate the additional witness, fortunately, they failed to complete their plan. They overestimated their abilities and clearly underestimated the potency of their chosen weapon, House of Horrors. Both victims of the attack survived, but were hospitalized with varying degrees of injuries and chemical burns. Law enforcement officers who arrived at the scene were intrigued by the abandoned car in the backyard, which did not belong to the Ryder family. Checking the license plates, they discovered the car's lawful owner. It quickly became clear that the police had been called to the home of the car's owner earlier that week, but no one had answered the door. Officers immediately headed to Randall and Wendy's residence, and this time, after unsuccessful attempts to get a response, they forced the door open and entered. The stench of decay hit them immediately, clearly coming from upstairs. In one of the bedrooms, there were bloodstains on the bed and floor, and the open closet revealed an empty safe. Getting into the other bedroom was impossible because the door had been sealed shut with construction adhesive, requiring time and effort to cut through. When the police finally entered, they were met with a horrifying sight. On the floor lay the decomposing body of an elderly man with his hands tied behind his back and signs of severe torture. The bathroom door was also sealed, taking more time to break through. Inside, the remains of the homeowner's wife were found. It was evident that she had been tortured and beaten before her throat was slit, which caused her death. The house was in complete disarray, with trash, boxes and containers of spoiled takeout food everywhere, empty alcohol bottles, and the sink filled with dirty dishes. Police had visited the house dozens of times over the past year and a half, and knew that the deceased couple had a granddaughter who frequently ran away, behaved aggressively, and got into trouble. She became the prime suspect in this case. But where to find the minor accused of such a heinous crime? Dangerous guests. When the injured Ryder family members were informed about the events at the Jorga house, they immediately pointed to Cassandra, stating that Johnny could be her accomplice because he was infatuated with her and might follow her lead. The young perpetrators and robbers were declared wanted, along with the car they escaped in. After fleeing the scene, the couple went to a store and bought 5 liters of milk to wash off the bear spray residue and relieve the painful burning. After some thought, Johnny remembered his best friend from high school, Jason, with whom he had been inseparable during their senior years, but had almost lost contact after graduation. The criminals decided to seek help and temporary refuge at Jason's home. Jason was very surprised when his former classmate appeared at his apartment with a girl. The pair looked frightening, but Johnny claimed they were in trouble and had nowhere else to turn. According to Johnny, he had a severe argument with his mother over his girlfriend, whom she disapproved of. Allegedly, his mother kicked him out and sprayed them with pepper spray, affecting both of them. The uninvited guests asked to take a shower and clean up. Jason and his mother were very kind-hearted and allowed the couple to use their bathroom, gave them clean clothes, fed them dinner, and even offered them to stay the night. The pair accepted the offer since they had nowhere else to go. In the morning, the apartment owner prepared breakfast and coffee for everyone. She chatted amicably with the guests, asking if there was any other way she could help them. Suddenly, the sound of police sirens grew louder outside. Police cars arrived right under the windows, and a minute later, officers addressed Johnny and Cassandra by name through a megaphone, urging them to surrender. Jason and his mother were shocked by this turn of events. Johnny, grabbing a large kitchen knife, thanked their hosts for their hospitality and ordered them to leave the apartment immediately. Terrified, the hosts rushed to the exit while the criminals barricaded themselves inside. They had no intention of surrendering, deciding it was better to end their lives together. Failed Romeo and Juliet, the criminals knew they couldn't hide in someone else's apartment for long, and that a SWAT team would burst in any minute. Together, they went to the bathroom, taking a knife with them, and inflicted several deep cuts on their wrists, hoping to bleed out quickly. Johnny took out his phone and, already losing consciousness, recorded a voice message for his mother, asking for forgiveness. He expressed regret for his actions, said he loved his family very much and that he shouldn't have hurt them. He added that he was dying in the arms of his beloved girlfriend and that this was his final message. However, Cassandra didn't send any similar messages to anyone. When the police broke into the apartment and forced open the bathroom door, they found the young couple on the tiled floor, lying in each other's arms, surrounded by a large pool of blood. They were both unconscious but still showed signs of life. They were given immediate medical attention and then transported to the hospital. Shocking confessions of the young criminals. As soon as the young couple regained consciousness, they immediately asked about each other. Johnny was the first to give a confession, claiming he regretted his actions. Meanwhile, his girlfriend tried to portray herself as a victim, blaming everything on her boyfriend. She claimed she had been suffering from depression for years, was very angry with herself, and didn't want to live anymore. However, while recounting the events, she accidentally admitted that she had long wished for her grandparents' deaths. During interrogations, Cassandra behaved childishly, complained about the unappetizing hospital food, made faces, and even flirted with the detectives. She only started talking after being brought fast food from a restaurant, as she had requested. What the teenager revealed shocked even the most seasoned officers. When asked why she ended the lives of her grandparents, Cassandra calmly replied that they had lived long enough. She added that they interfered with her fun, made her go to school, and hid money that she needed. Cassandra showed no remorse for depriving the only people who cared for her of their lives and was only upset that she couldn't find her grandfather's bank card. When told that he hid his wallet under his pillow because he feared she would steal it, she laughed and remarked, "Grandpa was always damn smart." The young criminals also admitted that they wanted to end the lives of the Ryder family out of revenge for not accepting Cassandra and trying to prevent Johnny from seeing her, thinking she was a bad influence. They also planned to rob the family, reasoning that dead people don't need money. Next, they planned to visit Cassandra's mother and stepfather to get back at them for mistreating her. After all this, the couple intended to go to Florida to enjoy life by the ocean and spend the money. Trial and sentence after the failed attempt to end their lives together. The lovers met again several months later in the courtroom. It seemed that there was no love or passion left between them, as they consistently blamed each other, argued, and even resorted to insults. In the end, both pleaded guilty to the crimes against the elderly couple, the attack on the students, and the robberies. The court found Cassandra Bjorga and Johnny Ryder guilty on all counts and sentenced each of them to 2 life sentences with the possibility of parole after 60 years. Johnny expressed genuine remorse and apologized to everyone he had hurt, while Cassandra stated that she had nothing to apologize for. Why was the beauty queen robbed of her life? They say beauty is a powerful force capable of saving the world. But unfortunately, it does not guarantee happiness and can sometimes lead to trouble. Beautiful girls are always the center of attention, usually with many admirers. However, renowned beauties and crowned beauty queens are not only surrounded by fans and patrons, but also by many envious people, ill-wishers, and obsessed stalkers capable of unpredictable actions. The case of the tragic demise of the young Kimberly Oliveira shocked all of South America, becoming one of the most shocking and resonant. The girl, who won several beauty contests and was a contender for the title of Miss Brazil, was brutally and treacherously deprived of life. She dreamed of fame and recognition, but they turned out to be very different from what the model had imagined. Her name indeed became widely known far beyond her native country, and people admired Kimberly's beauty and youth. At the same time, they were horrified by the terrible manner in which she ended her life in the prime of her years, and by the many heights she could have still reached. Who was Kimberly Oliveira? Kimberly Karen Mota de Oliveira was born on February 26, 1998, in the small yet cozy Brazilian town of Manacor, located in the municipality of the same name in the state of Amazonas. She was the eldest child and the only daughter in the family of Nyla and Jose Oliveira, and was raised alongside her 2 younger brothers. The girl had Brazilian, Spanish, and Indian roots, and it can be said she won the genetic lottery. She possessed incredibly attractive looks that drew the eyes of those around her like a magnet. Kimberly had flawless skin, luxurious thick hair, a dazzling smile, and a slender, feminine figure. The beauty was used to universal attention, admiration, and adoration, with her peers and adults alike comparing her to an angel. From a young age, she engaged in dance and gymnastics, loved swimming, and meticulously took care of her appearance and manners. At the same time, she excelled in school, read a lot, regularly visited the theater, and studied foreign languages. Already in her teenage years, Kimberly began participating in various beauty contests, where she won prizes and also modeled in advertisements and clothing catalogs. In high school, she firmly decided she wanted to connect her life with the modeling business, especially since her mother Nyla was also a recognized beauty in her youth and won several titles, including Miss Manacor. However, Nyla later married and sacrificed her modeling career for the sake of her family and raising 3 children. Kimberly realized she had outstanding physical attributes and loved to pose in front of the camera. She was featured several times in fashion magazines, participated in shows, and won the official title of the most beautiful girl in her hometown. She also reached the finals of the Miss Amazonas contest in 2017, prepared to participate in it again, and was a serious contender for the title of Miss Brazil. In case of victory, she could have gone on to prestigious contests like Miss World or Miss Universe. However, Oliveira understood well that to win at such a high level, beauty and charisma alone were not enough. Contestants there are also evaluated based on their intelligence, education, moral qualities, charitable activities, and so on. Additionally, contenders for the Beauty Queen crown must not have criminal records, legal issues, or photo shoots in the nude style. Kimberly actively managed her social media accounts, where she promoted a healthy lifestyle, sports, and proper nutrition. She also detailed her life, posted shots from various photo shoots, and simply interacted with her growing number of followers. By 2019, her page on a popular social network had several tens of thousands of followers. The model aimed to be a role model, inspiring and motivating her followers. At 19, she decided to pursue higher education and aimed to enter medical school to become a dentist. To achieve this, Kimberly moved to Manaus, the capital and largest metropolis of the state of Amazonas, where her maternal uncle Henry lived. After successfully passing the necessary exams and enrolling in the university, she moved from a quiet, cozy place to a huge, bustling city, settling in her relative's house. Oliveira quickly adapted to her new environment, made friends, and successfully combined her studies with sports, advertising shoots, and participation in various projects. Persistent and cunning admirer. In her free time from studies and photo shoots, Kimberly usually spent time with her friends, often hanging out in various places as a large group. In the fall of 2019, Kimberly and her close friend were enjoying themselves at a popular club when a handsome young man named Rafael Fernandez Rodriguez approached them. He wanted to get to know Oliveira and offered to buy her a cocktail. However, the model, accustomed to the heightened attention towards her and knowing how to handle such situations, politely declined, noting that she was not alone and didn't need anything. Rafael simply apologized for the disturbance and left. But the girl didn't yet know that this entire scene was premeditated and orchestrated by the stranger. The fact was that the man had been following the young model's social media page for about a year, closely observing her, but never attempting to make contact until that day. He knew well the places the beauty frequented and decided to act, pretending to see her for the first time and merely wanting to meet her. At that time, Rodriguez was 31 years old, recently divorced, and obsessed with the idea of meeting and starting a romance with Kimberly. Learning from posts and stories that the model had moved to Manaus, he also moved to the city, where, having a legal education, he quickly found a high-paying job in corporate law and rented a spacious apartment in an elite residential complex. Then, he began implementing his plan, closely monitoring Oliveira, waiting for the right moment to approach her. After the unsuccessful attempt to meet at the nightclub, Rafael decided to step out of the shadows and started sending the girl private messages on social media, inviting her on a date. He also actively commented on and liked all the posts the model shared on her profile. For several months, she ignored the persistent follower, paying him no special attention, as she regularly encountered similar situations, and this guy didn't particularly stand out. Rodriguez then changed his tactics, adding Kimberly's classmates, friends, and even relatives to his friends list, trying to befriend them and gain their trust. This plan succeeded, and he managed to obtain her phone number from one of her close acquaintances. The obsessed stalker then began messaging her in instant messengers, suggesting they meet. The man studied the object of his admiration well, knowing what she liked, where she went, what music she listened to, and so on. He started attending outdoor training sessions occasionally conducted by Oliveira herself, and only there did he manage to catch her attention. They finally talked, and after that, they began regularly calling and messaging each other on social networks. Rafael managed to pique the girl's interest as he was well prepared. Despite a significant age difference of almost 10 years, an easygoing friendship developed between the young people. The man cautiously approached, trying to court and please her without scaring her off, but also not letting her forget about him. His tactic worked perfectly, and in March 2020, Kimberly and Rafael declared themselves a couple and started officially dating. Possessed owner, the attractive and romantic guy who did everything to win the beauty's affection, revealed his true colors as soon as they began dating. He started literally monitoring his beloved's every move, wanting to know everything about where she went, whom she communicated with, messaged her, and so on. Initially, the girl even found it amusing, as no one had ever restricted or controlled her before. However, the situation worsened daily, and Rafael's behavior became increasingly intrusive and aggressive. He now decided which photos Kimberly could post on social media, when and if she could go live, whom to respond to and whom to block. Soon, she grew tired of this, attempted to set personal boundaries the guy couldn't cross, and they had a serious argument. Rodriguez had to apologize, and to make amends, he invited the girl to a luxurious restaurant and gave her a huge bouquet of flowers. He repeated this after each quarrel to avoid losing Oliveira, whom he had pursued so long and persistently. The man gave her expensive gifts, organized romantic dates at trendy spots, and said he would never leave her. Kimberly increasingly complained to her friends about her boyfriend, saying she couldn't take a step without his permission and approval. Raphael forbade her from talking to guys even at the university, took her phone without permission, checked calls and messages, and then created scenes. Sometimes he got so furious that the girl feared for her safety. Her friends confirmed this was abnormal, advised her to have a serious talk with the guy, and if nothing changed, to leave him before it was too late. Kimberly also understood she didn't want to live like this. Knowing a brilliant modeling career, diploma defense, world travels, photo shoots for fashion magazines, fame, and recognition awaited her. She didn't want to give it all up for uncertain relations with an unstable and obsessed owner who restricted, controlled, and sought to possess her like an object. Final decision by early May 2020. After 2 exhausting months of relationship, Kimberly decided to break up with Raphael but was unsure how to do it without triggering his anger. She waited for the right moment to announce the breakup, but it was no longer possible to delay. On May 10th, Brazil celebrated Mother's Day, a holiday Kimberly always spent with her mom. However, due to restrictions imposed by the raging COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, she couldn't travel to her hometown to congratulate her mother. Instead, Kimberly posted a photo of them together with a touching caption and words of gratitude. At the time, Nayla was in the hospital undergoing treatment after being diagnosed with cancer. After posting, Kimberly went for a run in the park with a few friends, including Raphael. Everyone who saw the couple that day claimed they weren't arguing, were talking nicely, and no one except her close friend knew that the model planned to break up with her boyfriend that evening and had already made her decision. At noon, Kimberly called her uncle and told him she would spend the day with her best friend Gabriella, but would return home to sleep. Later, she called Henry again, asking him not to lock the front door because she forgot her keys and promised to be back by midnight. Henry did as asked and went to bed, fully trusting his niece. In the evening, while at her friend's place, Kimberly rehearsed what she planned to tell her boyfriend. She carefully chose words to avoid hurting his feelings and to prevent any outbursts of anger, although it was very difficult. Finally, she seemed to have found the right delicate phrases and was ready for the important conversation. Around 9 in the evening, Raphael arrived at her friend's house in his brand new white Audi. Kimberly walked out to him with a smile, waved goodbye to Gabriella and got into the passenger seat next to the driver. No one saw the girl alive again. Mysterious disappearance of the couple on the morning of May 11th. When Henry woke up, he realized his niece hadn't come home and became very worried. Kimberly always told him when she would return and informed him if she planned to stay over at a friend's place. He tried to contact her, but her phone was off. He then called Gabriella, who said that Kimberly left with her boyfriend and hadn't been in touch since. Henry called Raphael, but he didn't answer, which was very strange. It soon became clear that the girl didn't show up for her university classes, something she had never done before. By noon, convinced that his niece was missing and no one had seen her, Henry went to the police to file a report about the disappearance of the girl and her boyfriend. However, the authorities just laughed at him, saying Olivera and her boyfriend were adults and could go wherever they wanted without telling anyone. Henry and a few friends of the missing girl began searching on their own. They first went to Raphael's apartment, but no one answered the door. His car was also missing from the parking spot. Everything indicated that the couple had indeed gone somewhere together, but Kimberly's close ones knew she would never disappear without telling anyone. By evening, Henry called his sister Nayla and told her what had happened. He didn't want to worry his relative, who was battling a severe illness, but he couldn't wait any longer since she had also been trying to contact her daughter all day and suspected something was wrong. He tried to reassure her that nothing bad could have happened to Kimberly since she didn't keep bad company, had no harmful habits, and avoided trouble. Kimberly's friends began massively posting her photos on their social media pages and various groups, asking for any information about the girls or her boyfriend Raphael's whereabouts. Since the young model was quite a popular figure, news of her disappearance went viral and thousands of followers joined the search. However, this yielded no results. Grim discovery: in a locked apartment, the police only began to act on May 12th, nearly 2 days after the couple's disappearance. A search warrant was obtained for Raphael's apartment, as it might contain clues or hints about the whereabouts of the young people. But what the authorities discovered when they forced open the locked door and entered the premises shocked everyone. Kimberly was in one of the rooms, but unfortunately there was nothing that could be done to save her. The lifeless body of the young girl lay on the bedroom floor in a large pool of her own blood, covered with a sheet. There were also several large bloodstains on the bed, and blood traces and smears on the carpets and floor coverings were found in almost every room. It was evident that the criminal had panicked, trying to cover up the evidence, but soon realized it was futile and simply fled, turning the air conditioner on full blast to slow down the body's decomposition, so no one would suspect a body was in the apartment. The forensic experts found 4 stab wounds on the victim's body, 2 to the chest and 2 to the neck. The weapon used was a large kitchen knife, which lay in the next room with traces of blood and clear fingerprints of the criminal. The perpetrator didn't even try to get rid of it or wipe off the traces, but just threw it on the floor. Judging by the absence of defensive wounds or signs of a struggle on the body, the girl was most likely attacked suddenly when she least expected it. It appears the attack happened on the bed, but she was finished off on the floor with a blow to the neck, severing her carotid artery. The apartment owner was nowhere to be found, and his documents, some personal items, bank cards, and car keys were missing. The state of the rooms indicated he had left in a hurry. If Raphael was previously considered missing, he was now reclassified as the prime suspect in the brutal crime. But where to look for him, and could he have left the country by now? Hunt for the fugitive criminal. The forensic examination confirmed that the fingerprints on the crime weapon belonged to the missing Rodriguez. No traces of other people were found in the apartment. At the time of the crime, only the criminal and the victim were present, dispelling any remaining doubts about the man's guilt. Alerts about Raphael were immediately sent to police stations across the state and circulated widely on social media, noting that a dangerous criminal was being sought and requesting any information about his whereabouts. Additionally, a search was launched for the white Audi that the suspect drove. Detectives understood that every minute counted, so they checked all reports from vigilant citizens. On May 13th, news came that a white Audi was found crashed in a ditch by the roadside in the neighboring state of Caracaray. The car, as it turned out, belonged to the suspect. Surveillance footage showed Raphael driving at high speed. Seems he lost control. The car veered off the road and overturned. However, it was unknown how badly the driver was injured and where he went. There was speculation that he might have hitchhiked to the Venezuelan border and fled there. Failed attempt to cross the border. It was soon learned that the injured man in the accident was indeed picked up by a passing car and taken to a nearby town. There, Rodriguez took a taxi to the nearest bank, withdrew almost all the money from his account, and then took the same taxi to the border town of Boa Vista. From there, he attempted to cross the border into Venezuela on foot to escape justice. Fortunately, his attempt to leave was unsuccessful. Due to restrictions related to the worsening COVID-19 situation, the man was not allowed to pass. He could have returned to Boa Vista, a city of nearly 300,000 people, and tried to blend in, but detectives found out that the suspect preferred to hide in the wooded area, waiting for things to quiet down. After a couple of days of searching, the fugitive was found deep in the forest, in a small hut almost camouflaged by the surrounding environment. However, the arrest didn't go smoothly. The police were suddenly attacked by men wielding machetes, whom Rodriguez had hired from the local population for personal protection, paying them generously in cash. Fortunately, there was no bloodshed, as the authorities showed their badges and explained they were there to apprehend a dangerous criminal. They informed the bodyguards that aiding the criminal could result in serious legal consequences for them as well. Raphael's version: by the time the main suspect was arrested, the police already had all the evidence of his guilt, so denying it was pointless. Surveillance footage showed Kimberly getting into his car, arriving at his place, going up to his apartment, and then Rodriguez leaving alone a few hours later, fleeing the scene. Interestingly, in all the videos the couple appeared calm, chatting pleasantly and smiling. Raphael left the apartment calmly, clearly not feeling fear, remorse, or guilt. Under the weight of evidence, the suspect admitted his guilt, but presented a rather strange version of the events of that day. According to him, he and his beloved decided to have a romantic evening and went to his apartment for that purpose, where they had intimate moments. Afterward, Kimberly went to take a shower, and Raphael decided to check her phone, finding out she had been chatting with several guys on social media. He wanted to confront her directly about it, but first went to the kitchen and took a large knife, hiding it under a pillow. He claimed he did not intend to harm her, but only wanted to scare her if she tried to deceive him. When Oliveira came out of the shower and lay on the bed, Raphael immediately started questioning her about whom she was communicating with. The girl just smiled and said she wasn't talking to any man. This infuriated Rodriguez. He realized his beloved was lying and mocking him. He grabbed the knife and quickly inflicted 2 blows to her heart. The victim didn't have time to understand or resist, but slipped off the bed onto the floor, where the attacker delivered 2 more fatal blows to her neck. Realizing what he had done, Raphael tried to cover up the traces, but quickly understood it was futile. He couldn't remove the body from the apartment unnoticed, and the suspicion would still fall on him. So, he simply covered the body with a sheet and turned the air conditioner on full blast to keep the room as cold as possible, slowing the decomposition process. Witness testimonies: Kimberly's best friend, Gabriella, testified as a witness, providing a completely different version of events. According to her, Kimberly had finally decided to break up with her aggressive and mentally unstable boyfriend that evening. She had spent a long time carefully preparing what to say, knowing that one wrong word could send Raphael into a rage. Gabriella insisted that Kimberly would not have been intimate with a man she planned to leave, and certainly wouldn't have joked about messaging other guys, knowing his reactions were always unpredictable. Another witness was the defendant's ex-wife, who confirmed that Rodriguez was a cruel person who suffered from uncontrollable fits of anger, affecting everyone around him. His aggression was the primary reason for their divorce. Raphael's only supporter was his mother, Fatima, who claimed that he was a good person and never meant harm to anyone. She blamed Kimberly, her ex-daughter-in-law, and everyone else for driving her boy to sin. Lenient sentence and its aftermath. Rodriguez's father did not live to see the trial. Realizing what kind of monster he had raised, the elderly man chose to end his life by stepping in front of a train. His widow insisted it was an accident, saying her husband felt unwell and accidentally fell onto the tracks. However, surveillance footage clearly showed otherwise. The defendant's legal team pushed the narrative of his insanity, repeatedly delaying the case by requesting new psychiatric evaluations. Ultimately, Raphael was deemed capable of standing trial for his heinous act. The trial began in October 2021, nearly a year and a half after the brutal crime. Despite the evidence of his guilt, Raphael received a surprisingly lenient sentence of only 14 years in prison, later reduced by another year. This outcome was due to the defense's successful argument that their client had acted in a fit of rage when he committed the crime. As a result, instead of life imprisonment, he received a significantly lighter punishment. On the day of the sentencing, October 28th, Kimberly's mother, Nyla Oliveira, passed away after a long battle with cancer. She had followed every court session via video call from her hospital bed, where she was in very poor condition. Just a few hours after the verdict was announced, her heart stopped. The Oliveira family lost 2 beloved members in less than a year and a half. First their cherished sister and daughter, then their loving wife and mother. Meanwhile, Rodriguez's mother vowed to wait for her son to be released from prison, as he was the only close family she had left after her husband's death. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with me until the end. I hope the stories gave you something to think about, or dream about. Sleep well, stay safe, and don't forget to subscribe. Good night.